That's immigration, immigration, and immigration. Those are the three issues that we are in a crisis today. I believe certainly the Netherlands, but I believe a large part of Europe. 2.5 million voters voted for my party especially for that reason. Of course, there are other issues, but that is still number one. And indeed, we have an enormous crisis. We have a total lack of houses in the Netherlands. You know, almost 1 million youngsters between 20 and 30 are still living with their parents at home, not being able to buy or rent a house and start a family. We have problems with crime, with our culture, but also budgetary. It's an enormous burden. So people in Holland often don't feel at home in their own street, in their own neighborhood. They are not xenophobes or racist, but they see that we cannot manage. You know, many of the people who are asking refugee in Holland are not women with their children, but are young men at the age of 30, 35, coming from countries where, well, you could have a question if they really are refugees. You know, Holland has two borders, one from Belgium and one from Germany. If you enter from one of those countries, it's the only way besides Schiphol Airport, then by definition you are not a refugee but a migrant, because you should have asked asylum according to the Dublin rules that Europe made in the first country that you enter that is a safe nation. But so we have a lot of problems, and the people are really demanding us, and this is also for my party the most important. If we manage, people will be satisfied. If we don't, they will be totally dissatisfied in the results also for my party.
But let's clarify. Europe needs a younger population. Europe is an aging population, the same as Japan, China, United States, United Kingdom. Now it's not in the EU as well. It needs young, skilled workers, doesn't it, to look after all of us who are getting older.
Yes, but they are certainly not skilled workers, and they are not refugees either. And because of the fact that, as I said, we have a total lack of housing all over Europe, in Germany, in Holland. Our own families, our own people cannot start a family, which is also very bad for the development of the birth rate of the indigenous people in our nations. So indeed, you know, if you need some engineer from India or Canada, of course they are always welcome. And if we need capital when it comes to the human resources, they are also welcome. But that is not what is coming in Holland or in Germany or in France or in the United Kingdom today. People for different reasons, because they feel that they use our nation, they use our housing, they use our social benefits, and they are not really refugees. And even if they were, please don't forget, Holland is, besides Malta, the biggest populated nation in the whole European Union. So we just cannot afford to have any more in our society.
But when I look at the rhetoric or the commentary from southern European politicians, they will very often say this is a failure of European policy overseas, not by the time it gets to the border, whether it be our failure to engage with Africa or sub-Sahel, some key areas where actually our problems in the Europe perhaps not having forceful policy in Africa and Middle East has created a lot of these problems at the border.
Well, you know, you have to do both. You have to work through the European borders. In the past, that was not always too effective, you know, because there can be a socialist government that we saw in the past in Spain, and they can decide tomorrow that they will loosen up their immigration policy. And if you are in Spain, you are legal, you can go without any problems to any other part of Europe. But still, we should try. I agree with you that it's very important to try to toughen up our borders. But at the end of the day, we have to do it nationally. You know, we have to be in charge of our own immigration rules, of our own asylum rules, of our own border control. Any nation without being able to decide who is welcome in their home really is not really a nation. So we do both. And today we have a lot of possibilities. That's in our coalition agreement to toughen up the policies. But we also need perhaps changing the European rules. You know, I was speaking here yesterday. The day before, my friend Viktor Orban from Hungary spoke, and he said that he wanted Hungary to have an opt-out, like the Danish have on immigration in the European context. And that is also what we have, the Dutch new government have in its coalition agreement, that we will go also for an opt-out, that we want to be outside the ruling of the European Union, because really we need to be more able to decide what we want and not Brussels, which is the case today.
I guess the case of Brexit has changed your view on Nexit, for want of a better word.
Yes.
how do you see the relationship with yourself, your party, and your government with the EU going forward? It is well stated that you are very, very upset at the path that the Commission has taken, but it's a very similar new Commission going forward potentially.
Yeah, and I have to admit, the new government is staying in the European Union. Our people want it, our coalition partners want it, so that is something that we will not be able to achieve. But
would you still have a Dutch exit if you could?
No, it's too late for that, I'm afraid. But an opt-out on immigration and asylum is a part of an exit. You know, it's a part of a very important issue for policy. That if you don't have to adhere to the European rules, it's a kind of opt-out. You know, my problem is that you see in all the European nations, Holland, Germany, France, Italy, Eastern Europe, Sweden, you see parties like mine winning the elections. At the same time, you see that Mrs. von der Leyen is re-elected, and the policies in the European Union, European Commission, really don't change. So that's really a conflict. And I believe that the majority of the decision making should be in the nation state, in the national parliaments, and that will have an effect on Europe, but not through the European Commission, but through the European Council of Ministers, where the heads of state and the prime ministers are there, and they have to, in all transparency, be taken responsible by the national parliament.
But isn't
that is the way that things can change in Europe, not through the European Commission.
But isn't the problem, as shown by the Letter report, and we think by the Draghi report as well, that there hasn't been enough integration rather than too much integration? Actually, in order for Europe to be competitive, in order to face down external threats and create a better growth economy, we need more integration rather than a half-finished project.
No, I don't agree with that, you know. Dutchmen are not like the Greek, and the Danish are not like the Belgians. So we should work together and have a lot of ruling when it comes to economical policy. I can subscribe to that, but I would really not want the Dutch to lose more vetoes, for instance, when it comes to foreign policy, or that some of my colleagues want is to have, for instance, European taxation. That would be the worst thing ever, you know.